In this video, we're going to look at cases as a component. There's a separate video for the equipment that's used in the preparation of cases, and there's a separate video for the actual steps and procedures for cleaning cases. But we're talking about the sourcing of cases as a component at this point. There's basically three sources for cases. You can buy new unfired cases. This happens to be from a reseller in town of reloading equipment and supplies. You can buy them online directly from case manufacturers or from suppliers such as Midway or Natchez. You can also fire your own brass, which will give you dependable cases where you know how they've been cared for. You'll know that they're once fired. You'll know that they're all from the same batch. You also can buy cases online. I've had good luck buying once fired cases off of a site called Gunbroker, which is listed in the sources on the website. But a little bit more caution is necessary when you're doing this. For instance, this particular batch was brass that was supposed to all be 38 special brass, but I found mixed in with it not only nickel-plated brass, but nickel-plated brass that was the wrong caliber. This happens to be 357, not 38, and they both can be shot in some same guns. 357 mag revolvers can also shoot 38 specials. Their manufacture and assembly is going to be entirely different, so you're going to want to sort that out. Some reloaders will say that it's important to separate by head stamp, and there's a logic behind that. Each manufacturer is going to use a process that's going to ultimately yield very tiny variances in the physical structure of the case, which is going to lead to some tiny variances in the volume of the case, which will lead to some tiny variances in the pressure generated when the powder is ignited, which translates to bullet speed, which translates to accuracy. So there's people that say separating by head stamp is one way of at least controlling a variable that could affect your accuracy. Others say they don't care, it doesn't matter, they don't see any real difference, so they don't bother with that. In your early stages, especially at starting loads, it's not going to be terribly important, and it won't be a safety factor for you to use mixed brass. Just make sure that they're all brass. One of the variables with case acquisition, however you do it, you want to make sure you're using only brass cases. You don't want to use aluminum or steel, even if you shoot cartridges with cases of other materials. You don't want to use those in your reloading. It also goes without saying that you're going to want to make sure that they are all boxer primed cases. Now, normally that's not a problem. It can run into a problem if you're shooting foreign cartridges or if you're shooting military cartridges. What's interesting is it was a British gentleman by the name of Boxer who developed the single hole priming type system that we're going to use, that we use exclusively in this country. All of our dies have a single mandrel that goes down in the case prep stage and pushes out the old primer through that single hole. There was an American by the name of Berdan who developed a priming system with a two-hole configuration to the case that's used extensively in Europe, and ironically the Americans' design won't work in the US, and the British design generally doesn't work in Europe, but you do want boxer primed in this country. Now, for 45 ACP and 38 special and 308s, well, 308's not a good example because there's a lot of military 308 out there, and could be some foreign-made 308 that has Berdan primers on them. But you want to make sure you have the boxer primed cases. Generally, if you buy the brass or you shoot your own, you're going to be very safe and you'll have good quantities to get started. If you do buy it, make sure it's brass, make sure it's boxer primed. You can certainly tell by looking down the case with a flashlight to make sure that there's a single opening in there. You're going to have to inspect the cases unless you know they're brand new or you've fired them one time and they're traditional, conventional, not super hot loads. You're going to want to inspect them for any obvious damage, splits, especially case head separation if you have bought used cases, or reasons to throw them out immediately and not reuse them. You're going to want to make sure you don't have military crimps on them. On some 45s, a lot of 223s, and a good number of the 308s, there's going to be a telltale slight groove around the primer pocket hole. It's not that it can't be dealt with, it's that you don't want to be dealing with it in your early stages of reloading, because it requires some special treatment of the primer pocket on the case itself in order to be able to properly reprime them. So you want to avoid military crimps, you want to avoid overly dirty brass if you collect it from your own range, which is kind of a variation of buying it used. You may not know the pedigree of it, and you certainly don't want to be scrounging up the stuff that's been walked on in dirt and mud for any extended period of time. You don't want it particularly dirty. Staining of the brass is not a particular problem. Soot on the brass is not a particular problem. But real dirt or filth is. You could try washing them, but it's just easier and safer in the very beginning to source reasonably clean brass. You obviously want to sort out anything that's obviously damaged. Very slight indentations or scratches are not a problem. Being slightly out of round is not a problem. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you can see this in this video, but I was noticing even in these brand new 308 cases, just because they get bounced around in shipping and handling and thrown on a shelf. Let's see if you can see this. This case mouth is slightly out of round. Let's see if we can make sure that the camera focuses on this. That tiny bit of out of roundness is not a problem, especially in brand new brass. This will be taken care of in the sizing die operation, and we're going to go into that more specifically in the videos on the actual steps that you're going to take. But the process of sizing these cases, and you're going to size even brand new brass one time for that very reason. You want to make sure all of these little idiosyncrasies are taken care of before you begin your reloading. So use all brass. Do size it. Don't get involved in anything that's particularly old or beat up or damaged, and you should be fine in sourcing cases for your initial experience in reloading.